President Donald Trump this week stunned allies and sent shockwaves through global markets with his announcement of sweeping tariffs that cover more than 180 countries. Trump announced a baseline 10% tariff on all imported goods, with a reciprocal tariff equal to half of what he says other countries charge the U.S. in the face of unrelenting economic warfare. The United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender, Trump said on Wednesday. Economists have questioned Trump's formula, while others note that it imposes tariffs on countries with which the U.S. runs a trade surplus. What do you think? Is President Trump on the right track, or you also think the way economic experts are thinking? Maybe President Trump has taken a very harsh route and this is going to hit U.S. economy very badly. Please share your views in the comment box. And if you are new to our channel, do not forget to subscribe and hit like button. Let's dive into the news now.
Breaking news this morning. Look out below. Take a look at U.S. stock futures. All markets on edge and dropping. These futures just took a notable turn downward again on the heels of the worst day Wall Street has seen in 5 years. Now, right now, futures aren't quite as bad as yesterday, almost as bad, but they're still not looking good at all. And they just dropped more on the news that China is striking back retaliatory tariffs, big ones.
Right now, the Dow futures down sharply as global markets take a big hit in response to President Trump's tariffs announcements. And just moments ago, China announced plans to implement 34% retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods starting April 10th.
So senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich is watching all this. She's a little seasick, and she joins us now. Jackie, tell us the latest. And you have your own landscaper issues, it sounds like.
I do. I do. You know, Brian, this market reaction was a shock to everyone, really, except for President Trump, who likened it to a scheduled medical procedure to treat a sick patient.
I think it's going very well. It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom.
Let's dig more into the breaking news that John was talking about at the top. China is now hitting back, retaliating against the Trump tariffs, announcing this morning it is now slapping a reciprocal 34% tariff on all U.S. goods. With stock futures, I mean, this is not looking good. The next piece of data that investors and beyond are also going to be looking at this morning is the March jobs report. It comes out next hour. To date, the labor data has painted a picture of a jobs market that's cooling but not contracting. Is that all about to change? CNN's Matt Egan is here. Let's start with this breaking news, though, which is China now says 34%.
This will be a short time of uncertainty, and then we'll move back to the prosperity that this president has envisioned, that he is so bold and so willing to fight for. And I couldn't be more proud and stand next to him. The new golden age of prosperity will move in.
Now, there are some signs that the president's prescription might work. General Motors announcing plans to boost production of light-duty trucks in the U.S., announcing that it is hiring several hundred temporary workers as the auto industry also grapples with sector-specific tariffs.
Yeah, look, that is why we're seeing more mayhem in financial markets around the world. Markets are going boom, but they're going boom down. Look at this, Dow futures off by almost 3%. This signals another 1,200-point loss at the opening bell. That's on top of yesterday's 1,700-point loss. Steeper losses for the NASDAQ futures down 3%. So what happened was futures were down a bit, and then China retaliated. They came back and they say they're putting a 34% tariff on goods that are made in the United States. It's not shocking to see China fire back.
Right.
But this is an escalation that investors, of course, did not want to see, because retaliation, it can kill jobs here in the United States. It can slow economic growth, and it could just fan more retaliation. You could get into this escalatory cycle that is almost impossible to get out of. One other big development that happened last night is JP Morgan came out with a new recession warning. They previously said that they thought there's a 40% chance of a recession in the US and in the world economy. They've just upped that to 60%, citing specifically the tariffs. And of course, this is one of the reasons why we've seen markets take such a hit in recent days, but another recession warning.
And other countries are also responding. Mexico and Canada both hastening negotiations with the U.S. toward a new USMCA trade deal. Eric Trump posting to X, "I wouldn't want to be the last country that tries to negotiate a trade deal with Donald Trump. The first to negotiate will win. The last will absolutely lose. I've seen this movie my entire life." Meantime, Democrats are sounding off about the inflationary impacts of this plan in the House, planning to force a vote to try to kill the tariffs entirely, guys.
Here.
How bad was yesterday?
Yeah, it was so bad that some people on Wall Street have said instead of calling it Liberation Day, they're calling it Obliteration Day. It was the worst day for U.S. stocks since COVID. We saw the S&P 500 close at a 7-month low. We saw oil prices fall very sharply. Tech stocks get clobbered.
Yeah.
Bond yields went down because investors piled into the safety of ultra-safe government debt. One of the only things that went up on the day was fear. We saw the VIX volatility index go straight up. One of the stocks that got hit the hardest was Apple. Apple's really kind of at the epicenter here, right? It's the world's most valuable company. Yesterday, it lost $310 billion, worst day since 2020 for Apple, and that's because they make a lot of their stuff, their iPhones and other items, they make it all overseas, and those products are now facing steep tariffs. And again, now you have China retaliating.
Us guys, so China officially has retaliated. You know, when you put the fentanyl penalty along with the tariffs issued yesterday, we have tariffed China over 50%. They have just responded. They don't want to be bullied, air quotes. They with a 34% tariffs. They also listed 11 American companies of so-called unreliable entities, and they're going to halt chicken imports too. Listen, we get a lot more from them than they get from us. Yeah, and drone companies, which a lot of it's going to hurt the defense industry too, because a lot of the parts that we use, sadly and astoundingly, that our Pentagon uses are from parts and materials that we get from China. So this is a big wake-up call. The other big story is pharmaceuticals are going to be targeted as early as today. Why? Remember, we don't make any drugs here, but yet we use them all. So how do you bring manufacturing back? Well, if you're in Ireland, there's no reason to come here. It's at 0%. But now we're going to start bringing it back as tariffs hit. Lastly, about China, it looks like we're going to tariff third parties that buy Venezuelan oil. Guess who buys Venezuelan oil? China. So they could be hit in the oil pocket, too.
U.S. stock futures turning sharply downward, and they keep getting worse, I have to say. This on the heels of the news released just a short time ago that China is imposing 34% tariffs on all imports from the United States starting on April 10th. This, of course, in response to President Trump's new tariffs. This is retaliation. This is a trade war. Let's get right to CNN's Mark Stewart, who is in Beijing with all the news on this. Mark, you actually broke this the moment it happened. What can you tell us about it?
John, much anticipated. And as you said, if this is a trade war, this is a very big hit from China. 2 points I want to make. Number one, even though these tariffs are very broad, impacting all imports, it will really hurt American farmers and the U.S. agriculture industry the hardest. China imports a lot of soybeans of all products from the United States. It's been a top customer. With these additional tariffs, the price will skyrocket. It will force China's farmers, as well as food producers, to go somewhere else to buy soybeans, therefore hurting the United States. In addition, China has also put some restrictions on rare minerals that are used to make everyday household products, also electronics. That could impact the American effort to beef up more domestic manufacturing and production. The other point to make, the fact this is happening on a Friday night at the start of a very important holiday weekend says a lot. Beijing certainly could have waited until Monday, but this is making a very big statement, especially within China, to the domestic population. It's also coming at a time when China is really trying to establish itself as a stable, rational force in the world. In fact, there was a Chinese official just recently in Europe meeting with officials in Hungary, releasing a statement saying that China would be willing to have some kind of relationship with the United States to fight against protectionism, to fight against bullying. Again, John, the fact this is happening on a Friday night really underscores the fact that China is serious about this. Whether or not this leads to a discussion between Xi Jinping and President Trump at the negotiating table remains to be seen. But this shows just how high the stakes are in this back and forth between these economic superpowers.
Yeah, it shows how serious China is, and what we see in futures shows how little investors like it. A bad day yesterday, getting even worse today. Mark Stewart in Beijing, thank you so much for that update.
Well, Brian, I think the statement that they produce in they're being bullied is comical. They steal products. They use slave labor. They spy on everything that we do, especially if you're a company there, you got to turn over all your data to them as well. And they use that to build up. They're funding some of our enemies as well. So if it's in anything, anybody getting bullied is the United States. We finally, you got COVID as well. Good point, Ainsley. So what we have now is a president that is taking it seriously and taking it to China.
Yeah, and Bill Ackman, who is the billionaire hedge fund guy, he said, my advice to foreign leaders is that if you have not already reached out to President Donald Trump, you need to do so immediately. Trump is, at his core, a deal maker who sees the world as a series of transactions. Based on his track record to date with foreign governments, law firms, and universities, he is a tough but fair negotiator. He loves to make deals, and he loves to get things done promptly. Promptly. I expect Trump will reward the early deal makers with fairer deals than those that wait to sit down at the negotiation table, which sounds just like what Eric Trump said. And Donald Trump said, every country has called us. That's the beauty of what we do. We put ourselves in the driver's seat. So I think if you're one of the first few countries that's calling him, trying to make a deal, that's the one that's going to get those countries are going to get the headlines and going to say they're working with the United States. So I think it would be smart if they were doing this. It looks like they might be behind the scenes.
So a couple of things. Yesterday, Ainsley and I, we know a shirt manufacturer and textiles. And he said the one thing that I was showing Ainsley, the text messages that people should realize is that we don't really have textile mills that make shirts because it's not a matter of just plugging it in, turning on a machine. Right. You actually need skilled people to do it. So if you're going to tariff 25%, let's say, coming from Vietnam, right away, they almost become insolvent, especially if you took on debt after the pandemic to keep your company alive. So there's so many different elements to it. You could sincerely want to bring your business back. But America right now says, I'm sorry, all we have is vacant warehouses where factories used to be, or we were never good at it. Ethan Lane, the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs, Exporters, said, doesn't love tariffs, but understands what Trump's doing.
Nobody who imports or exports likes tariffs, us included, right? This is not a tool that we would pick if we had other options. But the president makes a very good point that for a very long time, we've had the raw end of a lot of these trade deals. You know, in the case of the beef industry, we've been used as, trade bait or a bargaining chip in some of these international relationships. And it's led to some really lopsided relationships. And our hope here is that the president can use this tool to square up the deck and get us a little bit of a better deal with some of these trading partners so that we're not balancing the backs of these different trade balances on U.S. farmers and ranchers. So, we're hopeful this happens quickly and that we can get back to some low tariff trading with our neighbors and our partners.
Yeah, I think he highlights a point, Ainsley, that I think shouldn't have to be highlighted is they don't want tariffs. This is not something that these communities want, but they're saying they're getting screwed over. And why are we accepting products with no tariff on it, and the other countries are putting tariffs on our beef? And I think that's what it's gonna come down to. All these mom and pops, all these local businesses, whether it's the steel, the farmers, all the other producers, they're saying that it needs to be some give and take.
Now, Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, and he's running for governor in New Jersey. He's also the ranking member of the National Security Agency and Cyber Subcommittee, which oversees the NSA. We will get to your expertise there in 1 second. I do want to ask you about this breaking news. The trade war is officially on. China is hitting back, saying it is imposing a 34% tariff to match the U.S. tariffs that Donald Trump imposed. What do you say to Americans now that we are officially in this big trade war?
As you point out, the trade war has begun, and it will have a huge and direct impact on American families, right? I mean, this is not one of these things that is a threat. Now it's real. And you're talking about a $3,800 a year hit on families from these across the board tariffs. And that's just not on what they're going to pay for everything from cheese to coffee to cars to clothing. But it's also it's already affecting, as we saw with the markets, affecting their savings, right? Their retirement accounts, a huge hit on those. So at a time when we're trying to get costs down, it's what I focus on every day, like getting costs and taxes lower. This is actually going to, and President Trump, who ran on actually making life more affordable, this is going to do just the opposite, right? It's going to make their lives more expensive. And it's why a few of us are put up a discharge petition next week to try to get rid of the Canadian tariffs that are in place, but also to demand from President Trump, what are you doing what's this chaos all about? You got to actually have a strategy, not just go out there and intentionally cause a trade war.
I want to talk to you about what President Trump and Vice President Vance has said. We have just had, as you just mentioned, one of the worst days for stock markets since March of 2020, which was, of course, the month the entire country began shutting down because of COVID-19. The tariffs show that the Dow closed down about 4%, the NASDAQ 6%, but the president and vice president say, don't worry, it's all going to be okay. Take a listen.
I think it's going very well. It was an operation like when a patient gets operated on. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom.
We're going to have a booming stock market for a long time.
Do you think that President Trump and Vice President Vance are right, that in the long run, this will bring back jobs and manufacturing to the U.S., but it will hurt just for a bit?
I mean, I don't know. All you have to do is look at the economists who were, the Fed chair called this tariff inflation. Everyone from Goldman Sachs, Moody's calling it a recession, J.P. Morgan Chase saying it's going to cause a recession. And there's already been layoffs announced in the United States because of these tariffs. So I don't know what kind of strategy it is to intentionally cause a recession, cause layoffs here at home, and hurt families directly with this new tax. So I don't know if long term, but there's not, the economists I talk to say there's no long term light on this situation. Right now, there's a lot of darkness for a lot of Americans, and we're seeing it literally in real time. And listen, I'm just concerned about people being able to pay their bills and be able to afford life. And this is going to be a huge tax on hardworking families at a time where we've got to try to do everything we can to make life more affordable for them. And that's, of course, what I've been focused on for years and continue to be focused on. How do we get costs down, not intentionally ruin their savings and their retirement accounts and cause price hikes across our country?